So we're going to get started by discussing the purpose of this presentation. So basically the intention is to provide a clear starting point and manageable steps to help you get started with your writing. I know for me personally, when I have to start writing for a project, I often procrastinate either because I am overwhelmed or unsure where to begin. So basically, this presentation is meant to address that challenge faced by some writers. And for those who have already started and don't necessarily face that same challenge, it just provides some structure for organizing your ideas. So the handout you see on the right hand of your screen should have been included in the email you received this PowerPoint in as well. It's maybe helpful to print or have up on another screen to follow along with during the presentation because the two really go hand in hand. So please feel free to fill out whatever sections seem helpful to you as you make your way through the presentation, or use it later when you're preparing to write, whichever works best for you. The 5 items I have listed on the agenda are taken directly from the handout and are meant to provide guidance on how to use each section. So first, we'll be discussing how to select your purpose for your memoir writing and then connecting that to possible memories to feature in your memoir. Next, we'll take a look at those ideas and narrow them down to one or two focal points. From here, we'll talk about what type of information is helpful to jot down about this memory, and using this section, we'll begin to think about item number 4, which is possible areas of your story that could be enhanced or clarified through research. Lastly, we'll discuss how to access and consult past submissions to Lifescapes to help you get a better idea of what you're working towards. As I mentioned, the first item on our agenda is brainstorming possible topics for your memoir. It can be helpful to first think about why you're writing your memoir in the first place and write that in the middle circle. I've written a few examples on the screen, such as passing down family history to future generations, but it could be as simple as you wanting to participate in something fun. So now you can think about the types of memories that will relate back to this purpose. For instance, a memory that is happy and makes you smile may make sense if you're writing for fun, but one that was challenging and provided you with a helpful life lesson may be more relevant to a purpose of healing through writing. Now that you've jotted down some possible memories to write about, you can begin to pinpoint which you feel are most significant to include. I've written the New York Book Editor's definition of a memoir on the screen because I feel it provides a really helpful comparison to an autobiography. While autobiographies focus on someone's life in entirety, memoirs provide a glimpse into someone's life by focusing on one or two seminal or personally significant events. I'd really encourage you to try to select one event that you can offer a lot of emphasis and detail on rather than trying to focus on two. You can think about which memory relates most to your purpose or which you would feel the most satisfaction just from writing about. Using the memory you just selected, you can start thinking about what's significant to you and others about the memory and what people need to know to really understand the story. So, for instance, if you're telling a story about your family vacation to Wasaga Beach, you could consider providing some background information on your family, such as how many siblings you have or where you lived. You can also identify what was morally important about the story. So, for instance, learning to let go of little mistakes, or identifying general life lessons, such as planning backup activities for bad weather. Finally, you can consider incorporating what was going on in your community at the time. So, these details can just personalize the story and help incorporate some local history. This section is really based on identifying what information you personally deem important to include in your memoir, so it depends on what you want to see in your final publication. So this part of the worksheet is completely optional, but it does provide you with the opportunity to clarify or enhance your story. So basically, Brantford Public Library provides its users with free access to online research databases, which can help you look through archives such as newspaper articles and birth certificates. These resources can serve two main purposes for your memoir. So first, it can help you pinpoint certain dates and names. For example, maybe you're writing about the day the Queen visited Brantford, but you can't remember the exact date. You could search the topic and approximate time frame to try to find a newspaper article that lists the date and maybe even includes a picture. The second use is just to add local details to your story, such as the community context we discussed in the previous slide. This could be as simple as the weather or political affairs. It is important to note that while a lot of this information is accessible online, some may only be accessible through being actually physically in the library. If you're having trouble finding any of that information or that's the case, please feel free to get in touch with me so we can work together to find the resource. If this is something that interests you and relates to your piece, please feel free to explore the resources listed on the third and fourth page of your worksheet. If not, no worries, just skip ahead to the next section. We've reached our final step, which is to look at memoirs other people have written. This step is intended primarily for people who have never written a memoir before to get an idea of the format, but it can also be helpful for experienced memoir writers to gather new inspirations on how to organize their memoir or explore different styles of writing. I've included the link to previous Lifescapes publications from 2008 to 2010 for your reference. It can also be helpful to know what you like about certain memoirs and jot that down so that way you can mirror those techniques in your own memoir. I provide an example of this on the next slide, but you're also welcome just to gaze through and take mental notes of what you like about it. I decided to complete the exercise in section 5 using my favorite submission in the 2008 edition of Lifescapes. On the right side of the screen, I jotted down some things that the author incorporated that made me really enjoy reading her story. This isn't meant to be a list of what makes the writing a good memoir, but rather just what I personally like, so your list could be completely different. For instance, maybe you would prefer a story that includes flashbacks rather than what I like of a story being solely in chronological order. You can either use the worksheet to jot some of these preferences down beside the provided bullet points on the worksheet, or as I mentioned before, just make a mental note of them as you read. That concludes all of the topics covered on the worksheet. My last suggestion is to begin looking for photos now in case you have to contact people and wait for them to be sent, or on the off chance that you come upon some on your daily activities and you want to set them aside. You don't need to worry too much about photos at this point if you aren't completely certain about what you're writing about or what you would want pictures for. It's just a helpful note to keep in the back of your mind. Hopefully you found some parts of this presentation to be informative and helpful in prompting you to start planning your memoir. I've written some next steps on the screen, and I really encourage you to fill out relevant parts of the worksheet and refer back to it to guide you in your writing. Please also feel free to check out the research resources listed on the third and fourth page of the worksheet. You never know what personal or local treasures you might find, so I really encourage you to explore those resources. Thanks so much for listening to this presentation and taking the time out of your day to fill out the worksheet. Please also feel free to reach out to me if you have any comments or questions about the presentation or the research process we discussed. As always, you can also reach out to Robin to ask any questions regarding Lifescapes or about your submission. We have provided a link to a short survey on the screen that helps us better understand the needs of our community, and it allows us to improve future programming, so if you have a chance, please do consider filling that out. Lastly, I hope you all have a rewarding and enjoyable writing experience this summer.